The Johnson family had been looking forward to this night for months. It wasn't often they all had time to go out together, what with their busy schedules and different activities. Dad worked long hours at the local hospital, where he helped countless patients as one of the few black doctors in the department. Mom had recently received wonderful news. After years of hard work and late nights, her law firm had made her a senior partner. This dinner was meant to celebrate her achievement. Their teenage daughter spent nearly 2 hours getting ready, trying on different outfits before settling on a blue dress that made her feel grown up. Her younger brother, normally resistant to dressing up, had willingly put on his best shirt and even allowed Mom to fix his tie without complaining. He knew this night was special. "Everyone ready?" Dad called from downstairs, jingling the car keys. The family gathered in the living room, all smiles and excitement. "You look beautiful," Dad told Mom, admiring her elegant black dress. Her eyes sparkled with pride. This promotion meant so much, not just the recognition of her legal skills, but also breaking another barrier in a field where few people looked like her. "Le Chateau. I can't believe we're actually going there," their daughter said, practically bouncing with excitement. She had seen photos of the restaurant on social media. Celebrities and important business people dined there. The chandeliers, the white tablecloths, the fancy food that looked like art. She had already planned to take pictures of everything. "Do they have normal food too?" her brother asked, adjusting his collar nervously. "Like food that doesn't have weird stuff on top?" Mom laughed and ruffled his hair. "Yes, they have normal food too. And desserts that will blow your mind." The drive downtown was filled with happy chatter. Dad had made the reservation 6 weeks ago, specifically requesting a table by the window so they could see the city lights. He'd even spoken with the head chef about Mom's favorite dessert, chocolate souffle, to make sure they could prepare it that evening. "Remember when we used to eat ramen noodles in our tiny apartment?" Mom said, squeezing Dad's hand as he drove. "Look at us now." "Hard work pays off," Dad replied, smiling at her. "You've earned this." Their son stared out the window as tall buildings came into view. "Is this the fanciest restaurant in the whole city?" "One of them," Dad nodded. "I had to wear my best suit just to make the reservation." Everyone laughed, though there was truth to his joke. Places like El Chateau weren't known for welcoming families like theirs with open arms. But things were changing, Dad thought. Their family had earned their place at any table in the city. As they pulled up to the valet parking, the kids pressed their faces against the car windows, taking in the glamorous scene. Well-dressed people entered through grand doors held open by doormen in crisp uniforms. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance. Crystal chandeliers visible through the windows cast warm light onto the street. "Now remember," Mom said, turning to look at the children, "best behavior tonight. Sit up straight, napkin in your lap and..." "Use the outside fork first." Both kids finished her sentence in unison, having heard these instructions several times already. Dad handed the car keys to the valet, who gave them a quick once-over before taking the keys with a stiff nod. The family stood together for a moment on the sidewalk, straightening clothes and taking deep breaths. "Ready for the best night ever?" Dad asked, offering his arm to Mom. She smiled and took it, more than ready. The children followed behind their parents, walking tall with excitement and pride. They had no idea that instead of the wonderful celebration they had planned, they were walking into a situation that would change their lives forever. For now, though, there was only joy and anticipation as the Johnson family approached the grand entrance of Le Chateau, ready to celebrate Mom's well-deserved success. The Johnson family walked through the heavy glass doors of Le Chateau, immediately enveloped by soft music and the gentle clinking of silverware against fine china. The restaurant's interior was even more impressive than the photos online. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in pristine white cloths, fresh flowers adorned every surface, and waiters in crisp black uniforms moved gracefully between tables. Dad approached the host stand with confidence, his family close behind. The host, a thin man with slicked back hair and a perfectly pressed suit, looked up from his computer. His smile faltered for just a second when he saw them, so briefly you might miss it if you weren't paying attention. But Mom noticed, and her shoulders tensed slightly. "Good evening. We have a reservation for 7 o'clock, Dad said warmly. "Table for 4 under Johnson." The host's eyes drifted down to his screen, his fingers tapping a few keys. The pleasant expression on his face had been replaced by something more closed off. Johnson, he repeated, scrolling through his list with exaggerated care. I'm not seeing anything under that name. Dad's smile remained fixed, but confusion crept into his voice. That's strange. I made the reservation 6 weeks ago. I spoke with someone named Philip. He confirmed everything yesterday when I called. The host's eyebrow raised slightly. Philip isn't working tonight. Perhaps there was a miscommunication. Their daughter glanced around, noticing a white family being greeted and led to their table without any questions. A well-dressed couple was seated immediately after arriving. Something didn't feel right. Could you please check again? Mom asked, her lawyer voice emerging, polite but firm. The reservation should be there. We confirmed it just yesterday. The host sighed and made a show of searching again. I'm very sorry, but there's nothing here. We're fully booked tonight. Their son tapped at Dad's sleeve, pointing discreetly. But Dad, look at all those empty tables. He was right. Through the dining room, at least 4 tables sat unoccupied, their settings pristine and untouched. Mom and Dad exchanged a look that the children had seen before, a silent communication that meant something unfair was happening. Dad pulled out his phone. I have the confirmation email right here, he said, his voice still pleasant but with a new firmness. He turned the screen toward the host. Reservation for 4 at 7:00 p.m., window table, it was confirmed. The host glanced at the phone, then back at his computer. Other guests were arriving now, looking curiously at the family standing at the entrance while they were promptly escorted to their tables. Ah, the host finally said, his tone suggesting he'd discovered something. I see the issue. There is a Johnson reservation, but it appears to have been misplaced in our system. Unfortunately, we don't have a window table available right now. Mom looked past him. 2 window tables stood empty, their chairs waiting for guests who hadn't arrived. Those tables look available, she pointed out. They're reserved, the host replied quickly. Too quickly. Like ours was? Dad asked, his patience wearing thin. The host's smile tightened. I can put you on the waiting list. It could be a significant wait, possibly an hour or more. Their daughter felt her face growing hot with embarrassment as other diners began to stare. Her brother shifted uncomfortably beside her, sensing the tension. That's unacceptable, Mom said quietly. We made this reservation well in advance. We're celebrating a special occasion. The host shrugged slightly, a gesture that said without words that their special occasion wasn't his concern. I can seat you near the kitchen if you prefer not to wait. Dad took a deep breath, the kind he always took when trying to stay calm. I'd like to speak to the manager, please. The manager is very busy at the moment, the host replied. Then I suggest you unbusy him, Mom said, her voice level but with steel underneath. We're not leaving this spot until we speak with someone in charge. The host's nostrils flared slightly, but he nodded. One moment, please. As he walked away, phone in hand, their daughter leaned toward her parents. What's happening? She whispered. Mom put an arm around her shoulders. Sometimes people don't treat others fairly, she said quietly. But we're not going to let it slide. Not tonight. Their son looked worried. Should we just go somewhere else? Dad shook his head, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. No, buddy. We belong here just as much as anyone else. We're going to stand our ground. The family stood together in the entrance, feeling the stares of other diners, but holding their heads high. They didn't know yet just how bad things were about to get, or that the manager approaching from across the restaurant would say words that would change their lives forever. The manager appeared from the back of the restaurant, walking with the kind of confidence that comes from years of being in charge. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and an expensive-looking suit. His name tag read General Manager, and his face wore the practiced smile of someone who had handled countless customer complaints. Good evening, he said, looking at Dad first, then briefly at the rest of the family. I understand there's an issue with your reservation. Mom stepped forward. Yes, there is. We made a reservation 6 weeks ago for 7:00 tonight. We confirmed it yesterday. Your host is claiming it was misplaced, despite us having the confirmation email. Now we're being told we have to wait an hour when there are clearly empty tables available. The manager looked at the host, who handed him a tablet. He scrolled through it, frowning slightly. "I see," he said finally. "There seems to have been some confusion in our system." "That's what your host said," Dad replied. "But confusion doesn't explain why people who came in after us are being seated at tables that are supposedly reserved." The manager's smile tightened. The restaurant had grown quieter. Nearby diners were pretending not to listen, but their sideways glances told a different story. "Our reservation system is quite complex," the manager explained, his voice lowered. "Certain tables are allocated based on various factors." "What factors?" Mom asked directly. The manager shifted his weight, glancing around at the watching eyes. He leaned in closer, as if to share a secret. "Look," he said in a hushed tone that still carried to the family's ears. "We have a certain clientele here. They expect a particular atmosphere. I'm sure you understand." The daughter felt her stomach twist. She looked at her brother, whose eyes had widened with understanding. Even at his young age, he knew what the manager was implying. "No," Dad said firmly. "I don't understand. Please explain what you mean by atmosphere." The manager sighed, annoyed at having to be more direct. "Our regular guests come here for a specific experience. They're paying top dollar for that experience. And our money isn't good enough." Mom asked, her voice calm but sharp as a razor. The restaurant had fallen completely silent now. Even the soft background music seemed to have paused. Every eye was on them, every ear straining to hear. "It's not about money," the manager said, his fake smile finally dropping. "It's about fitting in. And frankly, you people don't fit the image we're trying to maintain." "You people?" Dad repeated, his voice rising slightly despite his effort to stay calm. "I'm a doctor. My wife is a lawyer. We made a reservation. We're dressed appropriately. What exactly about us doesn't fit your image?" The manager's face hardened. "Don't make a scene. I think we both know what I'm talking about." The daughter felt tears of anger and humiliation burning in her eyes. She slipped her hand into her pocket, fingers finding her phone. Without drawing attention, she began recording. "Say it," Dad challenged, looking the manager directly in the eyes. "If you're going to discriminate against my family, at least have the courage to say it out loud." "Fine," the manager said, his voice cold. "We don't typically serve your kind here. It's not personal, it's business. Our regular customers would be uncomfortable." Mom stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fury in her eyes. "Are you refusing to serve us because we're black?" The manager glanced around, suddenly aware of how many people were watching. For a moment, it seemed like he might backtrack. Then his face settled into a mask of disdain. "We don't serve your kind," he said flatly. "Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave before this becomes a bigger problem." The son grabbed his sister's hand, squeezing it tightly. She squeezed back, still recording with her other hand. "This is illegal," Mom said clearly, a lawyer voice in full effect. "You cannot refuse service based on race. That violates civil rights laws." "I'm not refusing service based on race," the manager countered smoothly. "I'm refusing service to disruptive customers who are causing a scene. Now please leave before I call security." Dad put a protective arm around Mom's shoulders. "My family is not causing a scene. You are. And trust me, this isn't over." "Let's go," Mom said quietly to the children, her head held high despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "We don't need to spend our money where we're not wanted." As they turned to leave, the daughter caught the eye of a woman sitting nearby who looked horrified by what she had just witnessed. The woman gave her a small nod of support before turning to glare at the manager. The family walked out together, their special evening shattered but their dignity intact. What they didn't know was that the daughter's recording was about to change everything. The ride home was quiet. No one felt like talking. Their son stared out the window, occasionally wiping his eyes when he thought no one was looking. Mom kept reaching back to squeeze his knee, offering silent comfort. Their daughter hunched over her phone, her thumbs moving rapidly across the screen. "What are you doing, honey?" Dad asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She looked up, her eyes still red but now filled with determination. "I recorded it. All of it. I got what the manager said on video." Her parents exchanged a look. "I'm posting it," she continued. "People need to see this. They need to know what happened." Mom turned in her seat. Are you sure? Once it's out there? I'm sure, their daughter said firmly. We're not the first family this has happened to, but maybe we can be the last. By the time they arrived home, the video was already gaining attention. Friends had shared it, then friends of friends. Comments poured in, expressions of outrage, support, and sadly, some people sharing similar experiences. The family changed out of their fancy clothes and gathered in the living room. Dad ordered pizza, comfort food to replace the elegant dinner they'd been denied. As they ate, they watched the view count on the video climb higher and higher. It's at 50,000 views already, their daughter said, refreshing her screen. And someone started a hashtag don't serve your kind. Mom's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello, she answered cautiously. Hi, is this Mrs. Johnson? A woman's voice asked. My name is Lynn. I'm a reporter with City News. I was dining at Le Chateau tonight and witnessed what happened to your family. Mom put the call on speaker so everyone could hear. What you experienced was wrong, Lynn continued. Completely unacceptable. I'd like to help tell you a story, if you're willing. People need to know this is still happening, even in our city, even at high-end places like Le Chateau. The family looked at each other. Mom covered the phone. What do you think? We should do it, Dad said. Not just for us, but for everyone who's ever been through something like this and stayed quiet. They agreed to meet Lynn for an interview the next morning. None of them slept much that night. Their phones kept buzzing with notifications as the video spread further. By breakfast, it had been viewed over 1 million times. The local morning news led with their story. Then the national networks picked it up. Their daughter's video played on screens across the country. The manager's cold words, "We don't serve your kind," repeated again and again. People began gathering outside Le Chateau with signs. "We don't serve racists, and discrimination has no place here." The crowd grew throughout the day. A famous basketball player tweeted support for the family and cancelled his upcoming dinner reservation at the restaurant. A popular singer did the same. Around lunchtime, their doorbell rang. Mom opened it to find their neighbors standing on the porch with trays of food. We saw the news, their elderly neighbor explained, her eyes kind behind her glasses. We wanted you to know that you have support right here on this street. Others from the community came by throughout the day, people they knew and some they'd never met. Their son's teacher brought cookies. Dad's colleague from the hospital stopped by with flowers. The family's living room filled with people expressing solidarity. Their phone kept ringing with interview requests, newspapers, radio stations, TV shows. Mom, using her legal background, carefully chose which ones to accept. They wanted their story told accurately, not sensationalized. By evening, the protest outside Le Chateau had grown so large that police had to close the street. The restaurant remained open, but inside, servers stood idle. No one was coming to eat. Look at this, their daughter said, showing them her phone. Someone had shared a screenshot of Le Chateau's reservation system. Every slot for the coming week showed as available, a stark contrast to their usual fully booked status. As they watched the news coverage of the protests, their son asked, "Do you think anything will actually change?" Dad put his arm around the boy's shoulders. "I don't know, buddy. But what I do know is that staying quiet never changed anything. Sometimes you have to shine a light on the darkness." Later that night, as the family prepared for bed, their daughter received a message from a girl at her school. "My parents own a restaurant downtown. They want to invite your family for dinner, on the house. They said to tell you that you'll always be welcome there." The message brought tears to her eyes, not of sadness this time, but of hope. In the midst of ugliness, they had discovered beauty in their community. The public reaction had shown them that for every person who would say, "We don't serve your kind," there were hundreds more who would say, "You are welcome here." 2 days after the incident, Le Chateau finally broke its silence. The restaurant had remained open despite the protests, though hardly anyone came to eat. Inside, staff whispered among themselves, wondering what would happen next. Outside, the crowd continued to grow. The Johnson family was having breakfast when Dad's phone buzzed with a news alert. He nearly choked on his coffee when he read it. "They've released a statement," he told the family, quickly pulling up the full text. Everyone gathered around as he read it aloud. Le Chateau deeply regrets the unfortunate misunderstanding that occurred with a family at our establishment. Our manager's comments were taken out of context and misheard in a noisy environment. We have always prided ourselves on serving all members of our diverse community and will continue to do so. Mom slammed her hand on the table, making the dishes jump. Misheard? Misunderstanding? There are hundreds of witnesses. It's on video. Their daughter looked up from her own phone, her face a mix of anger and disbelief. The comments are blowing up. No one's buying it. And indeed, the restaurant's statement only fueled the fire. Social media erupted with fresh outrage. The hashtag Note a Misunderstanding began trending alongside hashtag Don't Serve Your Kind. That afternoon, a local TV station ran an interview with a former hostess from Le Chateau. Her face was blurred to protect her identity, but her voice shook with emotion as she spoke. We were told to use code words for black customers, she revealed. If a black family called for a reservation, we were supposed to say we were booked, even when we weren't. If they showed up anyway, we were told to seat them near the kitchen or by the bathroom. More former employees came forward after that. A busboy spoke about racist jokes in the kitchen. A server admitted she'd been instructed to give less attention to black tables. Each new story made it clearer that what happened to the Johnson family wasn't an isolated incident, it was policy. On the third day, a food delivery worker posted online, "I delivered to Le Chateau every Tuesday for 2 years. I heard the manager tell his staff, we're not running that kind of establishment whenever too many non-white customers were seated in the main dining area." The restaurant's owners, a group of investors who owned several high-end establishments around the city, called an emergency meeting. They hadn't expected this level of backlash. Reservations had plummeted. Corporate clients were canceling private events. The restaurant's perfect 5-star rating had dropped to 1 star in just 72 hours. That evening, they released a second statement. After a thorough investigation, Le Chateau management has determined that the incident that occurred did not reflect our values. The general manager has been placed on administrative leave pending further review of our policies and practices. The family watched the news report together in their living room. Administrative leave, Mom scoffed. That's just a fancy way of saying paid vacation. Their son, who had been quietly processing everything for days, looked up from his homework. Do you think they're really sorry, or just sorry they got caught? Dad sighed, ruffling the boy's hair. That's a very good question. I think they're definitely sorry they got caught. Being actually sorry would mean admitting what they did and trying to make real changes. The phone rang. It was the family's lawyer friend, who had offered to help them navigate the situation. You need to see this, she said. One of their business partners just pulled out. The restaurant supply company that services all their locations announced they're terminating their contract. And 3 celebrity chefs have posted statements saying they won't be associated with Le Chateau or any restaurant in their group. The pressure continued to build. Local business leaders began distancing themselves from the restaurant. The city council announced they would review all permits issued to establishments owned by the Sang Investment Group. By the end of the week, reservation cancellations had spread to the owners' other restaurants. Their attempt to contain the damage had failed spectacularly. That Friday, their daughter came home from school with news. My friend's mom works for a big company downtown. They always had their holiday party at Le Chateau, but today they announced they're canceling and finding somewhere else. At dinner, the family discussed everything that had happened. The support from strangers. The other victims coming forward. The restaurant's weak response. What do you think happens next? Their son asked, pushing peas around his plate. Mom looked at Dad, then back at the children. I'm not sure. But I know one thing. They thought we would just walk away, embarrassed and defeated. They didn't expect us to stand up. They didn't expect the world to stand with us. Their daughter nodded, a small smile forming. They didn't expect us to fight back. What the family didn't know yet was that the owners of Le Chateau were already drafting a third statement, one that would finally acknowledge the truth. The restaurant's response so far had only made things worse. Their next move would determine whether the establishment could survive at all. A week after the incident, Mom sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. As a lawyer, she knew they had a strong case, but she wanted to be thorough. Dad brought her a cup of tea and sat beside her. "How's it looking?" he asked, glancing at her notes. "Good," she replied, tapping her pen against a legal pad. "The video evidence is clear. We have multiple witnesses. And now, with all these former employees coming forward," she looked up at him, "we could ask for a lot of money." Dad nodded slowly. "But that's not what this is about, is it?" Mom shook her head. "No, this is about making sure no other family has to go through what we did." The next morning, they met with a civil rights attorney who specialized in discrimination cases. Her office was warm and welcoming, with photos of her family on the desk and framed newspaper clippings on the walls, stories of cases she had won. "What happened to your family is textbook discrimination," the attorney said after reviewing everything. "They violated multiple civil rights laws. The case is strong, especially with the video." "We don't want money," Mom explained. "At least, that's not our main goal." The attorney looked surprised. "What do you want then?" "Change," Dad said simply. "Real, lasting change." They filed the formal complaint that afternoon. News of the legal action spread quickly. By evening, 3 more families had come forward with similar experiences at Le Chateau, offering to join the case. The children were curious about the legal process. At dinner, their son asked, "Will there be a big trial like in the movies?" Mom smiled. "Maybe, but most cases like this get settled before trial." "What does settled mean?" he asked, reaching for another piece of bread. "It means both sides agree to certain terms to avoid going to court," she explained. "In our case, we'll be asking for specific changes to how the restaurant operates." Their daughter looked up from her plate. "Will the manager get in trouble?" "He should," Dad replied. "But it's bigger than just one person. The whole system at that restaurant needs to change." 2 days later, they received notice that the restaurant's owners wanted to meet. It was faster than expected, a sign they were worried. The meeting took place at a neutral location, a conference room in a downtown office building. The owners brought their lawyers, 3 men in expensive suits who placed briefcases on the table with synchronized precision. "We want to resolve this matter quickly and quietly," the lead attorney began, sliding a folder across the table. "We're prepared to offer your family compensation for the unfortunate incident." Mom opened the folder and saw the number. It was substantial, enough to pay for both children's college education. She closed it without comment and slid it back. "This isn't about money," she said. The attorneys exchanged glances. "What is it about then?" Dad leaned forward. "It's about making sure no other family gets turned away because of the color of their skin. It's about changing a culture that thinks it's acceptable to say, 'We don't serve your kind.'" "What exactly are you asking for?" One of the owners finally spoke, his voice betraying his nervousness. The civil rights attorney pulled out a document. "We have prepared a list of structural changes we want to see implemented." The list was comprehensive: mandatory diversity training for all staff, a complete overhaul of the management team, transparent hiring practices with a focus on building a diverse workforce, regular civil rights compliance reviews, community outreach programs. The owners and their lawyers huddled together, whispering. Finally, the lead attorney said, "These demands are extensive. We'll need time to consider them." "Take all the time you need," Mom replied. "But understand that every day you delay is another day this story stays in the news." As they left the meeting, reporters waited outside. "No comment at this time," the civil rights attorney told them while the family walked to their car. That evening, as the family played board games in the living room, trying to have a normal night amid the chaos their lives had become, the phone rang. It was their attorney. "The owners want to meet again," she said, excitement in her voice. "They're ready to negotiate." "Already?" Mom asked, surprised. That was fast. It seems another group of former employees came forward today. Line cooks this time, with stories about what happened in the kitchen. The owners are getting desperate. After hanging up, Mom turned to the family. This might be working. They're feeling the pressure. Their daughter smiled. "Good, they should." Their son looked thoughtful. "Do you think they're actually sorry now, or still just sorry they got caught?" Dad ruffled his hair. "That's still a good question. But either way, they're willing to talk about real changes, and that's a start." What began as a humiliating evening was transforming into something powerful. The family hadn't just filed a lawsuit, they had started a movement. And now, sitting around their living room playing Monopoly, they could feel the first real signs that justice might be possible. The negotiations took weeks. Each meeting brought new discussions, challenges, and eventually progress. The family attended every session, even the children when they weren't in school. They wanted everyone involved to see the real people who had been hurt, not just nameless plaintiffs on a legal document. "We're not just looking for an apology," Mom explained during one particularly tense meeting. "We want real change that will last." Dad nodded in agreement. "This isn't about punishing your restaurant. It's about making it better for everyone." At first, the owners had resisted the most substantial changes. They'd argued about costs, practicality, and whether such extensive measures were really necessary. But as the story remained in the headlines and more customers shared their experiences, their position weakened. "Our business is dying," one owner finally admitted during the fourth meeting. "We need to do something different." After a month of back and forth, they reached an agreement. The settlement was unlike anything the city had seen before. Instead of a standard payout with a confidentiality clause, the restaurant committed to a complete transformation. The family gathered in their living room the evening after signing the final documents. Mom had prepared a special dinner to celebrate. "I still can't believe they agreed to everything," their daughter said, helping to set the table. "They didn't have much choice," Dad replied with a small smile. "You made sure the whole world was watching." The settlement included everything they had hoped for and more. Le Chateau would completely overhaul its management, with the general manager who had uttered those hateful words permanently removed. The restaurant would implement mandatory diversity training for all staff, conducted by experts recommended by civil rights organizations. They would establish transparent hiring practices aimed at building a truly diverse team at all levels. Most impressively, the owners agreed to create a scholarship program for minority students interested in culinary careers, and to host monthly community dinners for families from underserved neighborhoods who would never normally have access to such an upscale dining experience. "When do the changes start?" their son asked, passing the salad bowl. "Some have already begun," Mom answered. "They've hired a new management team. The training starts next week. And the community dinners," the boy continued, his eyes lighting up. "Those will begin next month, after they remodel and reopen," Dad explained. "And guess who they've invited to the first one?" "Us?" their daughter asked. Dad nodded. "They want us to be guests of honor." The family fell silent for a moment, each considering what that might feel like, to return to the place where they had been so deeply humiliated, this time as honored guests. "I don't know if I want to go back there," their son said quietly, pushing food around his plate. Mom reached over to squeeze his hand. "I understand, sweetie. We don't have to decide right now." Over the next few months, they watched as Le Chateau transformed itself. The restaurant closed for 6 weeks for remodeling and retraining. When it reopened, local news covered the event. The family watched the report from home, seeing the diverse new staff, the fresh management team, and the renovated space designed to be more welcoming to everyone. The restaurant's new general manager, a woman whose parents had immigrated from Jamaica, spoke passionately about the new direction. "We want Le Chateau to be a place where everyone feels welcome and valued," she said. "What happened here was inexcusable, but it has led to necessary change." The scholarship program launched with 5 students receiving full funding for culinary school. The community dinners began, with buses bringing families from across the city to experience fine dining in a respectful environment. 3 months after the settlement, the family finally decided it was time. They would accept the invitation to dine at the new Le Chateau. The night of their return, they dressed up again, not quite as formally as before, but still making an effort. The drive downtown felt different this time. There was nervousness, but also a sense of accomplishment. "Whatever happens," Dad said as they approached the restaurant, "remember that you all helped create this change. Be proud of that." They were greeted at the door by the new manager, who welcomed them warmly and led them to the best table in the house, right by the window with the city view that Dad had requested in his original reservation. As they sat down, their son looked around at the other diners, a diverse mix of people enjoying their meals, and whispered to his sister, "This is how it should have been the first time." She nodded, smiling. "Yeah, But if it had been, nothing would have changed for anyone else. When their server brought fresh bread to the table, he spoke with genuine warmth. "Thank you for coming tonight. And thank you for what your family did. I just started culinary school on one of the scholarships." Mom blinked back tears as she thanked him. The family that had once been told, "We don't serve your kind," had transformed not just one night at one restaurant, but had created ripples of change that would benefit countless others for years to come. Sometimes, the most powerful response to hatred isn't to walk away, but to stand firm and demand better, not just for yourself, but for everyone who might come after you.